Lars Nootbaar to the injured list for the St. Louis Cardinals as his laundry list of freakish injuries continues to grow. Is that a long-term concern for the Cardinals? And why not Jordan Walker to take his place on the active roster? All that coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer recording with you here in the afternoon hours of Friday, May 31st, 2024. The month of June just around the corner. The Cardinals beginning play on the final day of May with an even .500 record at 27-27. Cardinals sitting in second all by their lonesome in the NL Central standings after the Cubs lost on Thursday. But the Cardinals also dealing with some unfortunate injury news, as we alluded to and braced you for over the past couple of days on B-Schaeff Daily and on this YouTube channel. Lars Nootbaar indeed going on the injured list with an oblique injury. Cardinals made that news official just a bit ago on Friday morning, and we're here to talk about it now. So if you like Cardinals content all season long, make sure you hit the red and white subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of this video screen so that you're up to date on all things St. Louis Cardinals. Hit the bell as well for notifications on our channel when we go live, when we post new video content, as we do pretty much daily. The podcast is called B-Schaeff Daily for a reason. We actually didn't post yesterday on the off day because we had so many other videos on the channel. We didn't have a true standard B-Schaeff Daily, but we'll call that this for a little bonus edition on Friday since we skipped Thursday. And there's relevant news to talk about. That's the thing. Sometimes on a Cardinal off day, there's not a lot to get to. And today there certainly is, as Nootbaar does go on the IL with the oblique strain. It's an injury that he suffered apparently in the seventh inning of Wednesday's win over the Reds. He had that check swing in the seventh inning during his AB that he then finished off the at-bat with a single, so he reached base. That's the point at which Ollie Marmol and the trainer came out to check on him. I don't know if he injured it a little bit worse running to first. It looks like maybe he lunged for the bag, whatever it was, but that's when they noticed and went out to talk with him. Kept him in the game to run the bases, and he actually played an inning of defense in left field. I can't recall. I don't believe he necessarily had a ball hit to him. I honestly don't remember. But it wasn't until the eighth inning that Dylan Carlson replaced him in right field. So a little bit strange on that front when the replay was shown on Bally Sports Midwest and you saw him sort of grimace after lunging during a check swing. Those oblique, those core muscles, you use those to kind of stop your swing mid-go. The oblique is so important to basically everything you do in baseball, and that's what makes it such an obnoxious and pesky injury to recover from, and to do so quickly and to do so without a setback, because you use it all the time. You use that core inherent to everything you do, throwing a ball, swinging a bat, stopping your swing. It's just such an important muscle, and one that you've got to be careful with trying to come back from and making sure you don't do it too quickly. And that's the concern here for Nootbaar, who does have a laundry list, as I mentioned in the promo tease at the top of this video, of weird injuries that have happened to him throughout his big league career. You remember last year, opening day, sliding into third base, bends the thumb. I don't remember if he fractured it or not, but he was out for a period of time because of that injury, and then said after he was going to wear the oven mitt running the bases. I can't remember if he does wear that now or not. I should check a little bit more closely on that. But that was an injury that happened to him that was just a little bit flukish. And then later on, remember last year in August, he fouled a ball that went straight off the ground right up into his groin area. I think the Cardinals technically said he was on the IL with an abdominal issue, but if you watch the replay of that play, it was not really the abdomen that we would have been talking about. But you can understand the phrasing there. A little bit of a sensitive topic. So just a couple of weird injuries last year. And then this year, he basically elbowed himself in the ribs, if you recall, in spring training, trying to catch that ball in the outfield, and just a bizarre set of circumstances. And now it's a check swing that gets the oblique. I assume that's when it happened. I said evidently, apparently that's when it happened on the check swing in the seventh inning, because if he heard it earlier in the game, you'd think we would have seen it, but maybe it was something. Remember, he had to dive back into first base. He got the toot bland thrown out on the bases like an nincompoop. Earlier in that game, the same inning that Mason Wynn was caught stealing at second, later on in the frame, Nootbaar, the back pick from the catcher, got him at first base to end the inning, and that was a spot with runners on first and second. We talked about that being a pretty bad mistake. I don't know for sure. And again, as of this recording, we haven't heard anything from the Cardinals. They are not talking about the severity of the injury because, well, they simply haven't had media availability for reporters to ask about it for Nootbaar. But we knew this had to be a possibility. I had said that it looked oblique, the injury, based on the video that Bally Sports had shown later on in the game of the slow motion replay of that check swing. Anytime it looks oblique, it probably is oblique, and you're talking about a number of weeks at a minimum, right? Like 10 days, it's usually going to be at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, even on the lower end of the severity scale, simply because even if you think it's a low-end strain, you don't want to do anything to make it worse and then add multiple weeks or months onto your potential recovery timeline. Again, I'm going to guess that they're going to tell us later on this afternoon that it's more of a minor strain, simply because of the fact that he did stay in the game, stayed to, first of all, have the at-bat after what we believe was the initial part of the injury. Mentioning, though, that Toot Bland could have been trying to dive back toward the bag, something maybe tweaked there, but certainly the check swing is when we all took notice of it, and then he gets a hit. So, all right, still able to swing a bat and didn't think it was bad enough in the moment to where he should have called for a trainer and stopped right then and there, ran the bases, right, and then played an inning of defense. So ideally, based on all of those factors, we're seeing a lower-end strain for Nootbaar, but we just won't really know until A, the Cardinals tell us, and then B, until his recovery timeline actually plays out. Because you can think it's one thing, and then it can easily turn into another. But what we're seeing there is it's at least a strain because the Cardinals have put him on the IL, and that's a minimum of 10 days. I'm going to guess a minimum of 2 weeks before we actually see Nootbaar back. Hope I'm wrong. But honestly, if you set the over-under at 2.5 weeks, I'd take the over, just because of the nature of the injury, not because of anything I saw with Nootbaar, not because of anything to do with his ability to recover from an injury. It's simply anytime an MLB player gets an oblique, my thoughts immediately go to, yep, that's on one of the last injuries that I would like to see for a position player is oblique. Obviously, anytime you talk elbow, that's a bummer for a pitcher. Anytime you talk shoulder, it's a bummer for a pitcher. But in just the day-to-day playing as a position player, you get an ankle, you get a contusion somewhere, those things can sometimes be not too terrible, right? Maybe not even require an injured stint. But if you talk about the side and you're talking oblique or intercostal or these different muscles that are so inherent to everything they do, and it's a muscle tweak, it's a muscle strain, that's just bad. That's not it because it just is so tricky to figure out how quickly you should come back from it. How aggressive can you be? It's not the same really as rehabbing other injuries. You just have to be patient with it, is the way it feels. So the Cardinals are dealing with that now in the midst of, they're coming off a great stretch where they've won 12 of their past 15. They've gone from a season worst 9 games below 500 to now they're at 500. They've passed the Cubs by the virtue of Milwaukee's win over Chicago during the Cardinals off day on Thursday. So everything looking up except for this Nootbaar injury. Now, maybe it gives them special powers because the last time they had a key player go down to injury was Wilson Contreras, and not too long after that, they turned their whole season around. So can they rally around the idea that, look, Lars Nootbaar was really key to the turnaround that had been happening for the St. Louis Cardinals over the past few weeks? You look at his numbers before May 5th, pretty bad. He was at a season-low 162 batting average. He was a little bit sluggish when he initially came off of the injured list there in April and didn't quite start to put it together until he got a week or so into the month of May. Arbitrary endpoint, totally acknowledging that, but I'm going to start on the first day that he really started to do anything, which was a 1-for-3 on May 5th. Since then, Lars Nootbaar has been fantastic for the Cardinals, primarily batting in that number 2 spot in the order. He's got a .313 average, a 418, on base percentage, and a .552 slug, which equates to a .970 OPS, which is excellent. 4 home runs over the course of those 79 plate appearances. A couple of doubles, a triple. He's been taking walks with regularity. I mean, Lars Nootbaar has been a force of nature over the past 3 weeks or so, and now the Cardinals are going to be without him. So how do you replace Lars Nootbaar in the lineup is the question the Cardinals are going to have moving forward, and you just hope and pray that later on this afternoon you get news that it's on the milder side. Give him a few weeks to recuperate, and he's going to be back before you know it. Hopefully middle of June to late June, I would say would be the optimistic side of any time a guy goes on with an oblique, just because of the nature of that injury. It's not me making a commentary about Noot. You could do that a little bit if you want. I would say it is a concern, the strange injury history. It's a fluke if it happens once. It's a fluke if it happens a second time. But now that we're number 3, number 4, number 5, with the number of not only injuries and injured list stints, but just bizarre related injuries to Lars Nootbaar, Maybe that's just a guy that you could throw out the label. Is he injury prone? I would say that's typically a bit of an irresponsible label to throw out there, but here's what I would argue with regard to Nootbaar. The way he plays the game is with such a reckless abandon. He plays 100%. He's got one speed, and it's to go, and he's an athletic dude, and he goes hard on the diamond. Because of that, sometimes you are going to get yourself you're going to get yourself injured just by virtue of how hard you're playing the game. I almost wonder if the hesitancy that we've seen from the Cardinals to put Nootbaar in center field and maybe juice up the lineup a bit by having an Alec Burleson in right or Brendan Donovan in right to go along with the other in left, or back when Jordan Walker was on the squad, put him in right with a Burleson or a Donovan in left and try to figure out that center field spot offensively. I think the Cardinals have been hesitant to do that, honestly, in part because of the injury history of Lars Nootbaar, knowing how important it is to have him on the field and knowing that when you play that center field spot, you do end up having more of those full speed, potential collision, potential just going balls to the wall to try to make a play, that you can end up at top speed having more of an opportunity to hurt yourself. And that's the same thing we thought with Tyler O'Neill getting the shot last year. Like, why is it that the Cardinals are so hell-bent on putting O'Neill in center when he's been a Gold Glove left fielder? And if you think about his injury history, it's just not, it doesn't seem conducive to keeping him healthy and on the field for 150-plus games if you're going to put him in center field where he uses that reckless abandon, which the aggressive play style is to the credit of these players, Lars Nootbaar, Tyler O'Neill. But you also have to sort of protect a guy from himself at times, and that's sort of why I think the Cardinals have maybe shied away from having Noot play center field, not because they don't think he could do it, but maybe there's an element of let's try and keep the guy on the field so we can benefit from the talent that he possesses on a baseball field. That being said, he hurt himself on a check swing in the batter's box, so there's only so much you can do. And look, this isn't to say that, well, what's wrong with checking your swing? Why would reckless abandon? No, but like I said, it's irresponsible and a little bit tricky to talk about the label of a guy being injury prone, because I guess if a guy gets injured enough, then suddenly he's injury prone. But it just seems like, how can you avoid it as a topic when Lars Nootbaar has been injured in so many various different ways? Might not be his fault. It's just one of those things that seems to happen. And I think when you have a guy with an aggressive play style that does everything he does 110%, you may be more inclined to have some of those flukish injuries. Certainly on the play in left field when he elbowed himself in the ribs or whatever that was. Yeah, that comes from him just trying to make a play and being aggressive. And it's a double-edged sword sometimes with certain guys. Tommy Pham was that way for a while too. And then, durability and getting out there is so important to him. He's tried to make sure he could stay on the field. It's not that Lars Nootbaar is not valuing doing that. It's just the reality of where we're at right now, talking about another situation where the Cardinals, who have him penciled into their outfield for the next 5+ years, whatever it is, contract-wise, and then you hope to sign him beyond that. Yeah, he's going to be around, but you also have to recognize value of having other guys in depth on the roster when a guy like Lars Nootbaar is someone you're relying upon, because you might not have him for 150 games. We just haven't seen that from Lars Nootbaar to this point in his career. So that's where they're at now. Let's talk, though, about how they're going to replace him in the lineup, because they call up Jose Fermin, who has still been raking with AAA. He's like 3 for 15 or so in his big league stint with the Cardinals this year. 200 batting average, just hadn't gotten a lot of opportunity when he was here. But he's absolutely crushing it in the minors. A 1076 OPS for Jose Fermin. Would the Cardinals ever be willing to play him at shortstop over Brandon Crawford is a question that I think could allow for the roster to get a little bit more robust in terms of the bench down the road. I just don't think that's a move they're looking to make just yet. But keep in mind, if they ever do put Fermin at shortstop, it could be sort of a trial basis to say, is there more you could do with the Brandon Crawford roster spot if he continues to struggle at the plate? But for now, it's just a utility man that can play multiple spots, and we'll see if he just kind of gets stashed on the edge of the bench once again, or if they make a concerted effort more this time to get Jose Fermin's bat into the lineup and see if he can't continue some of the trajectory that he was putting together while he was down there in Memphis. But the name that I think is more interesting is the name that the Cardinals did not choose to bring back to the Major League roster today as the corresponding move to Lars Nootbaar going down, which is Jordan Walker, who had obviously some somewhat pitiful numbers when he was with the big club, hitting just 155 on the season for St. Louis, without a home run in 67 plate appearances. So the Cardinals sent him down, but the power has not returned to Jordan Walker's game. Now 109 plate appearances and counting without a home run for him in AAA, which accounts to 176 total plate appearances and 159 at-bats throughout the season. combined between St. Louis and Memphis that Jordan Walker has not hit a home run this year. And, I mean, he hit 20 last year combined between Memphis and STL. 16 of those were in St. Louis. He had a .445 slugging percentage at the big league level last year. Right now, he's slugging .376 in Memphis. He's hitting .277, so he's getting hits, but he's been sort of a singles hitter and takes his walks here and there for a .321 on base, but the slug has just not been there. 8 doubles, has a triple, but no homers in what amounts to almost 20% of an actual full season. Maybe more like 1/6 of a season. Forget if they play 140 or 150 games in the minors, but he's played 25 games. He's obviously batting up high in the lineup. 109 plate appearances, and he doesn't have a homer, and that's in the minors. So right now, the Cardinals, I think, are still waiting to see that version of him emerge. And I understand the question. It's like, well, if he's just a singles hitter, is that so bad? If that's just what he's going to be, can the Cardinals just call him up and allow him to, produce? Because if he can hit .277, that you could do a lot worse than that. But I think for Jordan Walker at age 22, which he just had his 22nd birthday, I just feel like it makes sense for the Cardinals to continue to try to get him to a point where he's going to be driving the ball more. Because to have him come up and to hit, if he's hitting .277 in Memphis, let's say he performs at an identical level, is that .240, .250 when he gets to the big leagues? All right, so he still has a decent enough batting average, but just no pop. I don't know how much that's going to necessarily help the Cardinals. But I've also advocated at times to say, hey, some of these pitchers in AAA, maybe their numbers are mediocre. They're not bad, but they're not over the moon great. But sometimes you might call a guy up just to give him a jolt and say maybe that's what jumpstarts him into playing really well. I think it can go that direction too. With Walker, it's tricky, though, because you also are going to have to account for his defense and recognize that although he has improved vastly in right field defensively since taking that position over, he started as an outfielder just a couple of years ago, was a third baseman. They converted him. I think he's made major strides in that area. I wouldn't say that he's a plus right fielder, though, at this point. So if you don't have power from a traditional power hitting spot of right field and you're carrying a guy who at best is probably just an average defender at this point in the outfield, you're sacrificing some things because the power needs to be part of that equation. And if it's not, the Cardinals' viewpoint, I think right now is keep him in Memphis. He's still only 22, bright future ahead, but try to get him on track before making that call. And right now, I think that could mean Dylan Carlson's going to see some opportunities, and this could be put up or shut up time for Dylan Carlson because his numbers are putrid. He looks bad in the field. I'm a big Dylan Carlson fan. I'm also objective. He doesn't look good right now for the Cardinals. And maybe this is the jolt that he needs to find some confidence rather than wondering, am I going to play every day? Maybe this is where he gets some run in the outfield. Maybe it's not. Maybe Ollie Marmol decides to go with a lineup where you see, Burleson in left, Donovan in right, Siani in center. Or Burley in right, Donnie in left, Siani in center, whatever it ends up being. And you still don't see very much Dylan Carlson. I think, though, they're going to have to use him at least on a somewhat consistent basis. But let me know, Cardinals fans, your thoughts on everything going on. Nootbaar to the IL. Can the Cardinals weather this storm? Because if you look at the time that Nootbaar started to really turn things around in mid-May, that's when the Cardinals started to hit their stride as well. Without Wilson Contreras, I thought it was going to be tough, and they did go on the losing skid after Wilson went down, but then they turned it around. It coincided with Lars Nootbaar turning things around, too, for his season. And now they're not going to have him for a period of time. Is that going to perhaps tank this run that the Cardinals are on and have them backslide a little bit? Is it going to take the wind out of their sails to not have Lars Nootbaar, who is a jump starter for an offense and for a baseball club? Is that going to hurt the Cardinals here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, make sure you hit subscribe on this video so you're subscribed to the channel and you don't miss our Cardinals stuff the rest of the way. If you also would rather listen on Spotify, you could do that too. All the B-Schaeff Daily episodes are posted there. Try to post all kinds of content too from other radio shows and just different places that get you Cardinals content, get your fix on a daily basis. So this is a little bit of a truncated version of B-Schaeff Daily compared to what we normally get, but I wanted to get this out there because it is newsworthy, and then you can expect a full, normal B-Schaeff Daily podcast after Friday night's game between the Cardinals and the Phillies. Miles Michaelis on the mound taking on Aaron Nola. Thank you guys for making this the place you go for your Cardinals news, information, and opinions. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.